Well, hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stephen Mercer, and I'm an independent educational consultant where I help students and families apply to college. And I'm also an adjunct professor in the College Counseling Certificate Program at the University of California, San Diego Extension. And I'm here again with another really remarkable expert in the world of college admission. And I'm really honored to have Scott Anderson, who's the Senior Director at the Common App and is Secretary to the Board, and has been at the Common App for over a decade and has really seen a lot of what's going on, sometimes behind the scenes, but also really upfront, working directly with counselors and students, and is a really, really knowledgeable person. And I'm excited to have you here today, Scott. So thanks.
Happy to be here, Stephen.
So, for those of us that work in college admission, counselors or folks on the college side, I think probably we all know what the Common App is. It's something we talk about probably every day without even thinking about, right? But maybe folks who are watching this, students, families, or others, may not know exactly what the Common App is. So could you give us a little bit of an overview of what is the Common App?
Yeah, I would be happy to. I think for people who know us, they generally know us for the tool that we have, which is the Common App, and is an application that students can use to apply to any of our over 900 member colleges and universities in the US and around the world. But that term member university, I think, is the part that people don't know. Common App is a not-for-profit membership association of colleges. Our mission is to pursue access, equity, and integrity in the college admission process. We have been around since 1975, which is a lot longer than many folks realize. And we were founded at the time by 15 small selective liberal arts colleges that were scattered around the country that realized, we've got a lot of students who are applying to each of our universities. Wouldn't it be intriguing to try to develop some sort of a shared application to see if we could streamline the process for those students, and in the process expose ourselves and our opportunities offered on our campus to students who might not otherwise have found us. And since that first cohort in 1975, we have grown to what will next year be 921 colleges and universities. They are public and private. They are co-ed and single gender. They are large and small and rural and urban and suburban and everything in between. They represent the full diversity of four-year higher education in America. For a long time, Common App was only for private universities, but in 2000, public universities joined for the first time, and now they represent about 20%, a little over 20% of our membership, state flagships and public and regional universities as well. And we're really excited that next year we will have our first two-year college join us. That's Richard Bland College of the College of William and Mary in Virginia.
That's really exciting. I didn't know about that. So I'm excited to hear that.
Yeah, as are we.
Yeah, really great. And are international universities outside of the United States included in that as well?
They are. We've got about 70, a little shy of 70 colleges and universities that are outside of the U.S. They joined our membership in about 6 or 7 years ago for the first time. The majority of those colleges outside of the U.S. are in the United Kingdom, but we've got universities in France and in Switzerland and in Italy and in Australia, really around the globe, and very excited to be able to offer pursuit of those institutions through the Common App.
Yeah. The notion of member colleges, I think, is an important one for folks to understand, as it is for counselors too, that I think, if I'm not mistaken, to a great degree, the members, the individual colleges that use the Common App, are a pretty important kind of foundation to the organization, right? Meaning in terms of decision-making, features of the application, kind of like the way faculty, right, drive a lot of what happens within a university or a college setting. Is that correct to frame it that way?
It is. And I would also add to that, we are working in concert with our members to make sure that we're serving students well as well.
Mhm.
And so while it's critically important that Common App exists to facilitate the transmission of applications and data to colleges and universities to help them make informed admission decisions about their applicants, we want to make sure, and you know this well from working on our outreach advisory committee, we want to make sure we're engaging students and counselors in that process as well, so that we're building out an application each year that doesn't just serve the needs of our members and the institutions, but also serves the very diverse needs of the students who use the Common App. I mentioned that we've got over 900 member colleges and universities, but every year over 1 million students will use the Common App to apply to college, which is an astounding number
Yeah.
when you think about it. Every year, about 500,000 counselors and teachers will use the Common App to support those students by sending transcripts and recommendations and other information to supplement the student's application as well. And those individuals, the students and the counselors and the teachers, have very real needs, both in terms of the information that they want to present to colleges and in terms of the processes that they need to go through to get the supporting information to colleges. So while it is absolutely true that members are the foundation of the Common App, and we must work to serve their needs, at the same time, we have to make sure that the application is also working for the million plus individuals who are using it in different ways.
Right, right. I mean, the technical side of what it takes to sustain this over 1 million applications and 900 members and the transmission of information, and I mean, it's just must be quite remarkable to pull the curtain behind the folks in your organization who are managing that. That just must be a feat unto itself, really.
It is. It's kind of funny. You talk to anybody in our organization, and they will almost to a person have the same story, that they'll be speaking with someone that they've just met, or maybe even someone they've known a long time, and mention where they work, and someone will say, "Common App, people work there?" Yes, indeed, they do.
Right.
To your point, that is a lot of data to get back and forth between students and colleges. And as you might guess, just from your work with students, we've got a couple of big deadlines throughout the year. November 1st is a big deadline because of early decision and early action applications. January 1st remains a big deadline as well. And when you look at the volume on those days, it's fairly astounding. We broke a record this past year. I think it was on it's either January 1st or December 31st. We crested, I think, 900 submissions in a minute in those last minutes of that deadline day. So that will give you a sense of the kind of support that we need to provide, both from a technical nature, but also a personal nature for people who have questions.
Right. So one of the parts of the Common App as an organization that I'm always intrigued about and I love sharing with folks, but I think you could share even better is, it's an application. It's a really important application. The students and families that are around that time of applying to college, they're probably going to know about it and have to use it. And then they move on, right? They apply. Hopefully they're going off to college, and they might not really have to think about Common App anymore as an application, that front-facing student, part of it. But I'm always intrigued as I learn more and more about how the Common App organization is more than just an application, right? There's a pretty robust set of initiatives that you are a part of, that you've started, that you've partnered with. Could you paint that picture for us? Because I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And it all goes back to that mission that I mentioned a few minutes ago of access, equity, and integrity. Access, we want to make sure we are advancing opportunities for students to get to higher education. Equity, we want to make sure that all students feel welcomed in the application, that they can see themselves in the application. Because if they can't see themselves in the application, they're going to have a really hard time seeing themselves in college. And so that is incredibly important for us. But the integrity piece is one that we don't talk about a lot, but it's very important to me. I interpret that as is not just doing the right thing, but when you think about the reach that our organization has, how can we use that reach for good? How can we share information with those students about filling out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, making sure that students understand that there's a process of getting to college that is not just the admission application, but also the financial aid application. That I think is a very simple look at it, integrity. One of the really exciting things for Common App in the last couple of years has been the unification that we have had with former First Lady Michelle Obama's Reach Higher initiative. When Mrs. Obama was in the White House, she began this initiative called Reach Higher, which really was to inspire students to continue their education beyond high school, whether that be a four-year college, a two-year college, a credential, something that would go beyond high school education, even work in the military, have a plan for after high school. When the Obama administration ended, that program existed for a short time in a nonprofit where some other Obama era initiatives were also living. But we had done some work with them on one of their texting campaigns where they were trying to reach out to students to help them understand the importance of filling out the FAFSA, and also trying to prevent summer melt, which is the idea of students who apply and say that they're going to enroll in a college, but then don't show up in the fall. It's a really big problem, particularly among low income and underserved students. So we'd already developed a relationship with the Reach Higher team. And we wanted to continue that. And as they learned a little bit more about Common App beyond the application itself, getting back to that idea of mission, of being more than an application, they saw in us a potential home. And we were delighted that January 1st of 2019, their whole team joined us. And so now Mrs. Obama's Reach Higher initiative is a Common App campaign, and they live within the organization. And it really is, it's a terrific marriage. If you think about Reach Higher inspiring confidence in students to continue their education, and you think about Common App channeling that inspiration toward a tangible action of applying to college, it is such a great fit that we are really excited to have them aboard. They also brought with them deep experience, not just in the public policy realm, which you might expect, but also in the area of philanthropy, supporting efforts that advance access and education. And so we now, because of their role and their presence within the Common App organization, are administering grants totaling $3.5 million from 6 different foundations, the Carnegie Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the Joyce Foundation, and others, helping us to advance some of those access initiatives relating to community colleges and transferring from 2-year colleges to 4-year colleges, which is of interest to our members. Looking at scholarships and how can the Common Application really help match students with scholarship opportunities that might be out there. So we're exploring that as well. And the other thing that, and this is something that the Gates Foundation is funding, is how can the Common App use the rich data that we have based on the variety and the number of institutions and students who are using us? How can we use that data for the public good? What are the trends that we see? How can we inform public policy? We need to dig into our own data, not just to inform practices that will help members and will help students and counselors, but also practices that can inform public policy as well. So those are some really exciting initiatives that we have largely because of Mrs. Obama's program coming on board.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So when you have the involvement of national foundations like what you're talking about, it just speaks to the seriousness of it, right? There's a certain kind of momentum that creates, and I just know that from my experience. So that's really impressive. Now, to what degree I'm curious about the public policy piece. Are you as an organization actively advocating and working on public policy at a national level, or what is that looking like?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. We don't have a dedicated effort to that right now, and really we're just beginning to see what our role is in that space. You and I are talking only a couple hours after the Supreme Court upheld DACA status, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which protects what are generally referred to as the dreamers, students who are brought here not as citizens, brought here for their parents by a better life, for a better life. The Supreme Court has now upheld that. It is a huge decision for our country, but also for higher education in general, and within a very short time of that announcement coming out from the court, Common App was out there with a statement applauding this. And that is not something that would have happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, much less a decade ago. And when I arrived at the organization, we're in a very different place right now. We have a different voice. We're learning how to use it. And I think we are learning where it can be most valuable.
Great. That's really neat. So I also want to talk about it's great that you're bringing up something that's happening in our society right now, hours old, and there's a lot going on, weeks and months old with the pandemic, as well as quite a bit of national discussion about access and equity and protests, a lot of upheaval and a lot of uncertainty. Sometimes it's hard to imagine. I guess, again, thinking about a student, right, who's filling out an application to go to college, and whether they look at that as daunting or exciting, can vary. And they're thinking the Common App, again, it's just this thing I have to fill out, right? How could that possibly have something to do with playing a role in the pandemic and those changes, or other bigger things that are happening in our society? What's Common App's position on that? About how is Common App responding to all these changes?
We've approached it in a few ways. When it became evident how deeply the pandemic was going to affecting higher education and students, society as a whole, we realized that we had a responsibility to do a few things. One was to try to connect students and counselors with resources that would be helpful in thinking about education and thinking about applying to college. There are a lot of terrific organizations out there that were putting together webinars and tutorials on conducting a virtual college search, for example, or on how to approach a financial aid office if your financial aid package had changed because of family circumstances. And so we worked to try to gather those resources together, put them up on a dedicated page on our website, and then share that link out with our community. We weren't the only ones doing this. There were other organizations that were doing it as well, and we're doing a fantastic job of it. We just wanted to make sure that we were helping as much as possible in that. So that was one thing. The other thing that we realized pretty quickly was that there would be a need for both students and schools, high schools, to report somehow what the impacts of the coronavirus have been on them personally or on their communities. The Common App has always had a space for students to share information about themselves through an essay. You know this, and you've worked with us in the advisory committee on making sure that those essay prompts are structured in a way that everybody can find a home within them to write about themselves. but students are so much more than this pandemic, and we didn't necessarily want students to have to use their essay to talk about this experience because there's so much more to them. They're, what they believe and what they love and what makes them happy. We want them to be able to share that with colleges as well. And so we worked to create a new space within the application that really is going to invite students, if they need it, because not everybody's going to need it, to talk about what their experience was like. Was there loss in the family? Was there illness? Was there financial disruption? Were there new obligations that came about because maybe, your parents were working and you needed to make sure that your younger siblings were doing their homework?
Right.
Were you in an apartment with a half a dozen other family members trying to do your own schoolwork with spotty internet or no internet?
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many different considerations, and we wanted to make sure that students had that space. And so we worked closely with counselors on the advisory committee, and you were part of that. We're so grateful for it, to come up with language that really would be inviting for students to share that information. We also did something similar for school counselors to help them, to give them a space where they could report how their school years, their calendars, their grading policies, their instructional methods might have needed to be adjusted because of the pandemic.
Right.
And those were received very well, those changes, and we look forward to being able to support students and counselors next year as they're going through the process. We also don't anticipate that this is going to be a one-year thing, right? There will be lingering effects of this situation, and I would anticipate that those questions would remain on the application for some time.
So that's interesting. Yeah. So, you've referenced the Counselor Advisory Committee, which I've been really honored to be a part of, which is, opportunities to have discussions with you all and your staff about what we see as counselors and any needs, and keeping us up to date, and vice versa, having some communication back and forth. And the discussion about whether, this question, this space in the application is a good idea was a really interesting one. And I'm really happy with the decision that you've made. But it's interesting to think about, and I hadn't thought about it until you just mentioned it, that this may not be just 1 year that this question is there, right?
Yeah, and also it's something I didn't add, but we also, if you think back over the last couple of years to some of the natural disasters that students around the world have needed to face, wildfires in California and
Mm-hmm.
earthquakes here and in other parts of the country, students are experiencing community disruptions all the time, and so while the COVID-19 experience really was the catalyst for introducing this question, we approach it in a bit more expansive way, and specifically cite natural disasters, some sort of community disruptions that students could be facing. So again, they've got a dedicated space to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. What I was thinking about just the other day, just kind of as I was going about my day, is, since a decision was made to include a question about COVID-19 on the Common application for this upcoming admission cycle, after the decision was made and that was put in the application, formalized, technically inserted in there, ready to go, what if something else happens, right? What if there's because we're seeing in the national news a lot, right? And there's either upheavals of sorts or other natural disasters, so the idea that there's maybe an ongoing space for students optionally to share that, I think, is intriguing.
Yeah, it's really important. And it's interesting. I said that we didn't want students to have to talk about their experience with COVID-19 if they didn't want to. But also, there are some students for whom that will be the thing that they want to share in their essay because it impacted them or their families so deeply, or because it gave them a new outlook on the world or on their community. And you could certainly look at the recent racial unrest that we have seen in this country and what we are grappling with as a society right now. Those are deeply felt experiences, and we fully expect that students will want to to share that, and they may choose to do it within their essay, but they may choose to use one of these new spaces to do it as well.
Yeah. So Scott, so much to talk about, so many interesting things. I'd love to continue our conversation. But, for folks who are thinking, I didn't know that the Common App was more than just an app, and they want to stay informed, they want to know about initiatives, they want to hear more about what it happens with Reach Higher or other ways that Common App supports students in public policy, et cetera. What's the best way for folks to stay informed?
I think through social media, the Common App account at Common App for both Twitter, Facebook, and also Instagram, and then at Reach Higher, and Reach Higher. Reach Higher and also Better Make Room. Better Make Room is a student-facing campaign of Reach Higher that dabbles a bit more in some of the social media outlets that younger students are using. Not old people like me who are using Facebook, but TikTok and Instagram in particular. We are always using those outlets, not just to share news about Common App and Reach Higher and what we are doing, but also to lift up the champions of the work that we do in general, whether that be colleges and universities that are doing really innovative and exciting things, or whether it be students themselves who are who've got a picture of themselves with a diploma in their hand and a beaming smile because they made it. Like, those are the great stories that we want. The other plug I'll put in too is back on last week, YouTube hosted in conjunction with Reach Higher a celebration day for the class of 2020. Mrs. Obama and President Obama spoke. There were speakers and entertainers over the 5-hour course of this event. It's hashtag Dear Class of 2020. You can find it on YouTube. I would invite anybody listening to this to drop in and catch one of the speeches, one of the performances, because they were so incredibly inspiring. And it's really why we do the work that we do.
Yeah. Hey, Scott Anderson of the Common App, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate you spending your time talking with us today.
Been a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.